Hello. This is going to be part two of Alex exams. Alex's exam three. So let's continue off to question 20. So question 20 says find tan of 60. So what you need to know, you need a little bit of the trig. Oh, hold on. So this is a trig problem, and you need to know a little bit of the unit circle. So locate 60 degrees on your unit circle. It is right about here. And then figure out the coordinates of 60. Oh, I remember. I know that 30 is radical 3 over 2, comma 1 half. That's what I know. So 60 is the reciprocal of that. So it's going to be 1 half, comma radical 3 over 2. Okay. So once you know the coordinates, this is your x, this is your y coordinate, figure out what tan is. So tan, if it's a degree within the unit circle, to find the tangent, it's just y over x. So my y is radical 3 over 2. My x is 1 half. And then as you can see, the 2's cancels. They're left with radical 3. Okay. Question 21. Solve. We have 4 parentheses x minus 8 plus 27 equals 1 half times 9 times 6. So let's do the parentheses real quick. That 9 times 6 is 54, I believe. Yeah, it's 54. And then what I would do is get rid of this fraction 1 half by multiplying both sides by 2. Okay, so over here, the 1 half times 2 is just 54. And then over here, let's just FOIL this, clean this up first, then distribute it too. So this FOIL this out. So this is going to be 4x, 4 times negative 8 is negative 32, plus 27. So if we clean that up, negative 32 plus 27 is negative 5. And then times this by 2. So this is going to be 8x. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Okay, so that's 64. Divide this by 8. You get x equals to 8. Okay, yes, letter A. Okay, so what I did was I just got rid of the fraction, simplify the left and right, and then solve for x. That's it. Okay, here we have a word problem. According to the CPI data, the maximum US inflation rate in 2023 was 6.4%. Assuming that this stays constant, if you have X dollars saved, the real value of R of this amount after n years is represented by the equation below. Say you've saved 10,000. How much will the real value of this amount be lost to inflation after 5 years? Round to the nearest dollars. So, um, what we got to do is find the R, and then I believe you subtract that by 10,000. That'll give us that'll tell you how much you lost in inflation. So what is Rn and X? So let's see. They say that R is the value, which is what we're trying to find. So they say that N is your years, and then our X is what's our X? I think that's the amount you save, so our x would be 10,000. Okay, so it's going to be r equals 1.064. If you want, you can write n to the negative 1, or n negative n is a positive power. That would be 1 over n. So you can put the n on the bottom and then times this by 10,000. And then just replace your n with, what was our n? 5 years. Okay. Oops. Error. No, 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 I think that's wrong. Our n is not 10,000. It is, double check. Oh, wait, it tells a rate of 6.4. I think that, yeah, so blah, blah. So it's r equals, oh, it's 1 over 1.064 to the n, which I believe was, how long? 5 years. Times by x, which is 10,000. Oh, I see. So I now, when I put that in the calculator, I get 7,333.17. So all you got to do is subtract that from 10,000. Now give us your inflation. So 10,000 minus 7,333.17. So now I have 2,666.83. So that's closest to D, right? Okay, so that was 22. Okay, 23. Find the roots of the quadratic. So when they say roots, they literally mean x-intercept. So what you're going to do is set this to 0, x squared minus x minus 4. And I believe you can factor this nicely. The other one we couldn't factor. So I'm going to do simple factoring. So I'm going to put x here and x there, and then blank space, blank space. So what two numbers multiply -42 and when added gives you -1? Well, that's definitely 7 and 6, and I'll use -7 and +6, right? Two numbers that are multiplied -42 and added gives you -1. Then what you got to do is solve for x. So my x is going to be +7 and -6. Letter A. Okay, solve the linear equation inequality. Um, what I would do is FOIL out this 4, so that's going to be 12. Negative 4x plus 18 is less than 5. You have negative 4x, and then what's 12 plus 18? 30, which is less than 5. And then subtract 30 from both sides. Negative 25. And then divide this by negative 4. Divide this by negative 4. You get x. And then what you do is divide by negative, so you have to flip it. And then it's 25 over 4. Letter A. Okay, what is the reference angle for 240? So reference angle is not the same thing as coterminal. So it's like the smaller angle. So first locate where 240 is. So here's 0 and 270. So 240 is right about here. And you need to know the rule for the reference angle. So we are technically in quadrant 3. So the rule for a reference angle in quadrant 3 is it's going to be theta prime. So theta prime means reference angle. Hold on. I forget the rule. Okay. So the rule is it's theta. So if you're in quadrant 3, to find the reference angle, it's going to be theta minus 180. So my theta, my original angle is 240 minus 180, and I get 60. So that is my reference angle, 60 degrees. Okay, so you got to know this rule. You're in quadrant 3, so the reference angle rule is theta minus 180. Okay, 26 says find cosine inverse of negative radical 2. So what this is saying is what degree gives you a cosine of negative radical 2? So we have to be careful on this one because I see two answers that could be correct. So where's cosine negative? Not 1, 2, and 3. So only 2 and 3. And in quadrant 2, it was, yes, it was 135 because it has an x coordinate of negative radical 2 over 2 and a y coordinate of positive radical 2 over 2. And then in quadrant 3, it would also be, I believe, um, yeah, I forgot the angle, but it does have an x coordinate of negative radical 2 over 2, positive negative radical 2 over 2. So why is it the correct answer is 135? This one. Why is it 130? Why can't we use this angle? Because We want to find the cosine inverse of negative radical 2 over 2. Technically, this is right, but the thing is, we're dealing with cosine inverse graph. We need to know the range. So the range of a cosine inverse graph is from 0 to pi. So what that means is we can only use from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2 only. So quadrant 2 is the 1, and that is 135. So that's why it's not 225. Okay, this one. Which of the graph below represents the graph y equals this quadratic graph x minus 3 squared minus 2? So what I would do is list everything you know about this graph. So I know it's quadratic because it has a power 2. I also know it um, open upwards because there's no reflection. There's no negative in front of the parentheses. Or what is it called? Concave up. That's what I meant. And what about the x minus 3 and minus 2? So that's like a shift or your vertex. So you have a horizontal shift 3 units to the right, and then you have a minus 2. That's a vertical shift of 2 units down. So if you could think of it, it's also a vertex. You have a vertex at positive 3, comma negative 2. So we have a vertex of 3, comma 2. It's quadratic and it's concave up. Which could that be? Is it A? Let's see. Does it have a vertex 3, comma 2? 1, 2, 3. Yes, and it's concave up. So I think that's the one. Let me check. Other. No. Not why not B? Because it doesn't have a vertex 3, comma 2. 3, comma negative 2. Wait. 3. Oh, sorry. 3, comma negative 2, not 3, comma 2. So that's not A. It's not B. Ooh, maybe C, because it has a vertex of 3, comma negative 2, concave up. C, D, no. So the correct answer is definitely C. Okay, two more and we're done. It says 28, find the solution of the equation negative 1/2 sine square of x of 1/2 x equals to 0 over the intervals from negative 2 pi to positive 2 pi. Okay, so this is a trig problem. What does negative 2 pi and positive 2 pi mean? So if you, this is going to be 2 pi, and then this is going to be negative 2 pi. Then what we're going to do is use some kind of Pythagorean identity. So we're going to use this one, sine square x plus the cosine square x equals to 1. Then what we're going to do is kind of manipulate this to look like this. So the only difference is our x is not x, it's 1/2 x. So don't worry about that. So I'm going to have to subtract sine square of x both sides. So you get cosine square of x equals to 1 minus sine square of x. Okay, and then what you're going to do is replace this with cosine square of x of, I think, 1/2 x. And then I guess what we could do is take the square root of both sides. We have cosine of x of 1/2 x equals to 0. So what you could do is figure out where is cosine 0. So cosine is 0 at pi halves and 3 pi halves, right? We look at the coordinate, it has a 0, comma 1. This has a 0, comma negative 1. And then you still have this 1/2, so it's going to be 1/2 equals to pi halves and 3 pi halves, right? Then you're going to multiply both sides by 2. So you get x equals to 2 times pi halves, that's just pi. 3 pi halves times it by 2, the 2's cancel, so you're left with 3 pi. So what is our answer? I think we could for I think it's just going to be you don't see we can't use 3 pi because we can only go positive 2 pi. 3 pi is when you go around the unit circle 3 times. But we could also, so which one of these are the closest? It's not this one. It's not this one. It's not this one. This is the closest one because we have positive pi and then negative pi, which is the same position as 3 pi, right? So that's why we can use D. This one, we just gotta plug in our value. So if b equals 2a, c equals 4/7 a, which of the following is a simplified version? So just plug in what you have. So 7a stays the same, minus 5 times b is 2a, plus 7 times c is 4/7a, and then simplify. So this is 7a, this is negative 10a, and then does that 7 cancel, so you're left with 4a. Clean it up. So we can combine that. What's 7 minus 10 plus 4? 7 minus 10 plus 4 is 1a. Convert 50 centimeters to yards. Okay, so we have to convert 50 centimeters to yards, and they give us these clues. 1 inch equals 2.5 centimeters, and 1 yard equals to 3 feet. So we're going to do like dimensional analysis. We'll just write it as one single fraction. I think that's the easiest. So what you do is start with what you have. Just hold on, get my notes. Yes. Start out with what you have. So you start out with 50 centimeters, and then you can put an invisible one here. Now we want to get rid of the centimeters, so we have to put centimeters on the bottom. And what is they say that for 1 inch, so you have to put inch on the top, is equal to 2.54 centimeters, and then continue. And then we got to get rid of the inch. So you put inch on the bottom and then put feet on the top. So we know that for 1 feet, there's 12 inches. And then almost there, we want to convert that to yards. So the last conversion is feet on the bottom because you want to get rid of the feet, and then yards on the top. So what's the relationship between yard and feet? They say that 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. Okay. And then you just multiply across 50. I mean, yeah, multiply it on top and bottom. So 50 times 1 times 1 times 1. 1 is 50. And then do the bottom. 1 times 2.54 times 12 times 3 is 91.44. And then when you put it all together, you get 0.5468. So that's going to be C. Okay, so that's the last part for Alex exam part exam 3. Okay, so we'll do another exam.